It's time for 41 is the Mic, a weekly Chiefs podcast with Nick Jacobs of KSHB 41 and Matt Derrick of Chiefs Digest. 41 is the Mic starts now.
Welcome, everyone. Yes, 41 is the Mic. I am Matt Derrick from Chiefs Digest, alongside run defense enthusiast Nick Jacobs from KSHB 41. Nick, you didn't have a lot to be enthused about last night.
Yeah, it's still football. I mean, I was doing a pre- and post-game show, so I was able to make some TV magic along the way, no matter what was or wasn't happening on the field. But Matt, terrible news. It is a red flag warning day. So we have the red flag warning T-shirt on. It is a red flag warning day. Some concerning things to see in the Chiefs, but you know what we do have going for us, Matt?
What have we got going for us?
A sport coffee. We got a sport coffee. It's going to be a great Saturday.
Well, it's at least a great Saturday for Patrick Mahomes. So
we don't know what is or isn't going on his day. Let's not make any judgments right now.
Hey, it's the sport coffee's moving. Pat's having a good day.
No, touche. I totally forgot about the connection. There
you go. All right, coming out of a game like that, Nick, 33-16. It's the preseason. I'm not concerned about wins or losses.
Yeah.
Anything just overarching that we learned about the Chiefs last night?
Yeah. Not having Chris Jones and Nick Bolton out there on that run defense. And they had some other guys that weren't out there too. I just didn't keep tabs on a regular basis on snap count because I was busy putting together a post-game show. So I couldn't inventory it like I normally would have. But yeah, no, I mean, they didn't have a disruptor along the defensive line. So that was problem number one. That can kind of disrupt the backfield and kind of really cause havoc on that first level. And when it got to second level, Jack Cochran was getting caught in the wash. And so whenever he's supposed to be filling, he's not able to get off that block. And then whoever would be on contain, which varied from safety and linebacker depending on the formation, they were struggling to either get off a block or to get into place. So the cutback lane was there. Front side was there on a regular basis, and so it was a struggle for everybody. Cam Jones came in a little bit later, and he has the athletic ability to fill and to get sideline to sideline, but from a strength perspective, there's sometimes he just can't get off a block. And Jeff Bossa right now, he's going to need a couple of years of strength training in the NFL to be able to effectively do that, but he's got the most high-end athletic ability to where he's able to shoot the gap and showcase that there in the fourth quarter on that big stop there towards the end. But on a down in, down out basis, it came down to the Seahawks being able to get to the second level, which caused every single one of those big runs, and defenders not being able to get off blocks to be able to shut that down.
Yeah, and you mentioned the snap counts. Mike Pennell, who you would consider your best run defender, maybe outside. I'd still say Chris Jones, you're still your best run defender on this defense. But Mike Pennell only played 6 snaps. Jerry Tillery, who is a pass rush first defensive interior player, played 27. Omar Norman Lott gutted through 12 snaps with, retweaking what looked like the ankle injury.
Yeah, that ankle kept giving out. Like, you could see it on plays where he's falling down and he's getting pushed back. That wasn't because he doesn't have the strength. That's because that ankle, that dude's been soldiering through since July 29th at this point.
Yeah, and the Chiefs, I mean, the players do have a little bit of a break, before the start of the season. So hopefully maybe that will get him the rest that he needs.
Oh.
The last night was also, and training camp, practices showed this was going to be the case. Last night was kind of a showcase for Marlon Tuipulotu, kind of his chance to either make a case for the roster or put some work on film. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure it was a great night for Marlon because he was on the field for a lot of big runs.
Well, and if I remember correctly, on one of the passes, he got held. Otherwise, he was walking the offensive lineman back into the quarterback's lap, and if he hadn't gotten held, he probably gets a sack. And so, I mean, that could have changed the fortune of his night. But I mean, yeah, no, he's gonna be, if you want to call it, you can get caught in the wash or whatever. He's just out there. There wasn't a lot of people along the defensive line that really popped or stood out on a regular basis like the Chiefs really, really need from a depth perspective down the road.
Yeah, and then bottom line, I mean, if you're not playing a couple of your best run defensive players, you can take a little bit of this just with a grain of salt. Chiefs did give up 268 yards worth of rushing, though, so it is a concern. Let's go to the other side of the line because that's the other place that everybody was going to be watching to see what happens. And we only got 10 snaps of magic from the first team, partly because I think, the Seahawks obviously had a couple of long drives, and the Chiefs had a plan. They were going to run their starters that were playing at least, and then the offensive line for one quarter and then get guys out. So one drive, 10 snaps. But what did you see from Josh Simmons and Kingsley Suamataia?
Yeah, Simmons, he's going to be a serviceable left tackle this year. He's going to at least at minimum be that. His athletic ability is really going to be able to carry him this year. Like we said last week, it's just a matter of them being able to get that punch to where it needs to be for him to really be able to potentially become the all-pro ceiling that he has available for him. I still think he's getting the strength back, both in his lower body and kind of what they're going to turn him into in a couple years. So on some of the drive blocks, like down the road, you hope to see him be able to kind of drive a defender a little bit more. But with what he's coming off of leg-wise, I totally get why he may not be there yet. No matter how hard he's rehabbing, that's going to take a time for him to get there. But I think the stars are aligning long-term for him to be a dominant left tackle in the league. It's just a matter of getting the finer points done. For Kingsley Suamataia, he's not comfortable at left guard. I don't see the confidence there. I don't see a mean streak with him that I want to see. Like, if you're an offensive lineman, there's a certain mentality you have to have. And this is what I'm going to convey more than anything else. If there's one thing you ever take away from me, is this. As an offensive lineman or defensive lineman, you have to be ruthless. You have to want to bury that defender in the ground every single play. You have to have in your mindset, I need to get lower than this dude. This dude's trying to take food from my family, and I'm going to bury him. So it's him and not me who has to worry about that problem. So for somebody like that, that's the mindset you have to have. Trey Smith has it. Creed Humphrey has it. Those two guys are kind of the staple of what you want in terms of dominance. So for those type of guys, you can't play passive-aggressive offensive linemen. You can't be like, well, shucks, you got past me. You're like, no, that dude, you're not touching 15. So you have to have some authority. Just like I said right there in my voice, you have to have an authority to it. You have to have a passion for it. Playing offense or defensive line is about passion. It's about a mindset to where you want to have a dominance. And like I said earlier, you want to bury that guy on every single play. And you may not be able to get to sometimes because of technique or whatever, but I have to see that fight from you every single play. Right now, I see a lot of passiveness from Kingsley Suamataia that concerns me, and we'll see if he can tap into what he needs to. But right now, he looks a little bit more like a teddy bear out there instead of a grizzly bear, and that's what you need to play offensive line. So he had the same issue where guy got up under his pads and pushed him back into the quarterback's lap. There was a time or two where he tried to take somebody wide, but they were able to kind of get the corner and kind of make Minshew have to take off a little bit. We have a small sample size, 2 weeks in a row, but the thing that continues to happen with him is he is getting walked back into the quarterback on multiple plays because either his pad level's too high or he's not lower than the defender and able to really kind of stun that defender and then knock the heck out of him.
Yeah, you mentioned we're talking about sample size, and last week.
Sorry, the sport coffee fires me.
The sport coffee has kicked in. I mean, it does.
It's talking offensive line in general.
It does its work, people. Yes. Last week, 11 snaps. I thought there were 2 that were questionable. The tough thing last night, out of those 10 snaps, 6 were pass block snaps, and I mean, I can only say that I think that there was one that was really good. Like you mentioned, I mean, the Gardner Minshew scramble. His guy just got completely away from him. And I mean, Gardner at least had a lane to get out of there and saw it quickly. But that was there was just not a lot of good work on pass blocking last night.
Yeah, and something just popped in my head back to the run defense when you talked about the lane. There was one play where Drew Lock ended up taking off there on a run. I can't remember if it was third quarter, second quarter, or what it was, and he took off for a big 20, 30-yard run there, What happened on that play is the Chiefs ran a crossfire. Bossa goes first. Cochran's supposed to come around. Crossfire's been used forever. Steve Spagnuolo loves it. He wrecked Tom Brady in the Super Bowl back in 07 with it. Just came in like a wrecking ball with that concept and just destroyed their Super Bowl hopes of going 19-0. Chiefs ran a variation of it last night in a preseason game. Boss has got the speed. Boom, he goes. Cochran, on the other hand, just boop, 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 and couldn't get there quick enough. So and then so Boss is just so fast that you got to hit that perfectly in tandem together. So either Boss is going to have to slow down at Cochran's level, or Cochran has to get faster, or you need a linebacker who's faster to be able to hit that crossfire to where it overwhelms Drew Lock in that moment. Instead, Bossa gets there, then the running back, if I remember correctly, kind of rides him upfield, or whoever's blocking him rides him upfield. Then Cochran's coming across. Lyman's got a hand on his shoulder pad, not necessarily holding him, because if you really want to, you could rip through. Ref will see it, boom, flag. But it created the lane for it on that one. So that was technically another run play that happened. So that just popped in my head because you used the word lane, and then visually I was like, yep, there it is. There's another point I wanted to bring up.
Well, you brought up you started saying crossfire, and it made me realize what point I wanted to make too, which is that Seattle came into this game and certainly did a lot more game planning for this game than the Chiefs did. I mean, Seattle came in, I think, with a purpose. I mean, and that's to be expected. I mean, the Chiefs, even the preseason, are going to get some teams that want to establish some confidence. They want to get some things going. The Chiefs did no specific game planning for this. They'll do a little bit next week for the Bears, just because it's going to be kind of a rehearsal for the regular season. But the Chiefs for these two preseason games have just gone out there and done their thing. They didn't do any game planning specifically. So maybe take that with a grain of salt too in these teams' performances, that the Chiefs were more concerned about themselves than with their opponent in these two games. But putting a bow on it with the Kingsley situation at left guard, what's your level of concern going forward with Kingsley?
I mean, what happens along the left side of the offensive line determines so much of the Chiefs season. Josh Simmons' ability to stay healthy and to be able to develop at the rate that he has the potential to, and what he's capable of, and what Kingsley can or can't be, because Kingsley's situation and how he develops or how he performs or what ends up happening with him is going to determine how many times a defensive tackle gets in Patrick Mahomes' lap, or how many times the teams will take a rusher wide, take a defensive tackle, pinch them in on Krieg to occupy them so that they can get Kingsley to either turn his shoulders or to get him one-on-one and just bull rush whoever right back with a running start right into him, into Patrick Mahomes' lap. So the Chargers, they're going to be doing that. Any opponent the Chiefs face after that, whether it's Eagles, Ravens, Giants, through the first 4 weeks, that's what they're seeing on tape right now. That's what they're going to attack. So right now, the Chiefs have to figure out how to get Kingsley in a spot to where he's not getting pushed back and he's not getting bull rushed back in any way, shape, or form, because that's what teams are going to attack to disrupt that Chiefs offense early. So, and this is another thing where I'm going to say it, and is what happens along the left side of that offensive line in terms of development for Simmons and Suamataia is going to, what we're going to judge on that is that's going to determine a lot for Corey Matei and Andy Heck about where they are as coaches in their development. This is kind of where those two guys go trajectory wise, is going to kind of be the calling card of what they do as coaches. Fear or not, that's what it's going to be. So, we'll see how everything works out. I'm not closing any doors. I'm not saying this is done, this is over. But I'm just telling you, you and I, when we were on Stephen St. John's show a while back, and we got asked the question about, week one starters in that Chargers game, I said I thought Simmons was going to be the left tackle, and it was a hypothetical question about who has a better chance to start between what was it, Simmons and Suamataia, if I remember correctly. And I had more questions with Suamataia than I had with Simmons, and I'm not necessarily trying to do this to be right or anything, but I'm just saying there's less I have concerns about with Simmons, and he's continued to check all those lists off, than I do with Suamataia. And for Suamataia, a lot of it's just fire. Like that's the biggest thing I need to know in terms of what he has, because technique you can fix, but a person, if they do or don't have the fire, that's where, you kind of wonder. Because the Suamataia said all the right things in that draft press conference, when we talked to him right after he got drafted on the Zoom and everything, and how he was going to protect 15 and all that type of stuff. And you love hearing that. But what you do in terms of due diligence answers if you genuinely will actually put into practice what you're saying.
100%. And those two positions on the offensive line were certainly two of the things we're going to watch going into that Seattle game. Another group that we were going to watch, and this is just continual, and now I think it's going to even get more intense, is the cornerback situation. Now, Chiefs, they played last night, still don't have Christian Fulton back full. Jalen Watson is just coming out of the concussion protocol. So. Sit down Trent McDuffie. So you didn't have three of what you envision as your top three corners. But both Najee Johnson and Noel Williams, the next two guys in line, Najee leaves with a shoulder injury. Noel Williams entered the concussion protocol. That shouldn't be long term. We don't know Nazee's situation, but Najee goes out. Josh Williams comes in. What did you see between those two guys? Because those were the two that we really got the most extended look at last night outside of Noel Williams.
Yeah, so there's two plays for each, and I'll tell you the difference between the two of them. They both got thrown at in the end zone. So first one for Najee, he does a good job. Last week we talked about how he hopped outside on that slant when the defender went outside. He hopped outside, and then the defender went in on the slant for a touchdown. This week the defender, he didn't take a little bit of the bait on the sell, and so he just continued to ride the defender outside, let him take outside leverage. He kept inside leverage. And he read his hands, and then once he put his hands up, he perfectly timed his swipe on that football in the end zone and stopped a touchdown pass from happening. So he did a good job bouncing back a week later when he was in that pressure cooker situation. Now you take Josh Williams against, I believe, Bobo at that point, and what Bobo did in that one is he was going to get his hands up late. So, Williams so Josh is with him in stride. And then what happened there, the reason he gave up that touchdown is because there was a timing mechanism in his head. And I could tell to where he's like, okay, I should see his hands now. I don't. Where is this football at? And then once he turned his head, when he turned back, he gave a little spacing, much more spacing to Bobo, to where even with his arm length, he may not be able to get it, and he turned at the wrong time. And I'm not saying I'm saying like the timing of it to when the ball's there and he turns, one, he gives a little bit of spacing there, but then two, when the ball's already at a point to where whenever he reacts and turns around, he's not going to be able to get the swipe he wants to be able to disrupt that pass. So he was obviously frustrated, gave up the touchdown, and then there was a crossing route or a slant route, I can't remember offhand, that was over the middle that he was covering, and I think they were able to convert that one, or they got close to converting it, where he gave up inside leverage, and the guy was able to get the crosser over the middle to against the quarterback, and it either got, like I said, it got close to conversion or conversion. And there was another play, and this doesn't relate to them, but it goes back to Jack Cochran again. That wide receiver screen for a touchdown, and I think that was Bobo too. Cochran hesitated. Like, he has to, boom, you got to go. You can't hesitate. You can't stop. Athletically, you're not able to recover in the same way Bassa would be able to, or somebody else. You got to go and force that fill, and you can't allow that cutback lane off that screen because those other guys are occupied. So him and Brian Cook looked like they ended up being in poor spots. And in turn, that allowed, it might have been Bobo on that one, I can't remember, but that allowed somebody to catch it, cut up field, and go for a touchdown. So, positioning perspective for a lot of the Chiefs' defensive depth, the thing you take away from last night, even whether they were or weren't game planning, the concern that you have is, boy, that defense can't afford a lot of injuries. Because if they do, there's going to be a lot of coaching going on, and Chiefs' offense may have to score a little bit more points than what you'd hope. But what you get a chance to look at, even when a team game plans against you, is how are they understanding the fundamentals you're teaching them, no matter the situation, and how much situational stuff are they able to execute no matter what the game plan is.
Nick, I feel like we dwelled on a lot of the negatives of last night's game because there was a lot of them.
If by negatives you mean reality, then yes, we did. And by the way, I love a good sport coffee this time of year.
Sport coffee's definitely kicked in. Chiefs needed some sport coffees last night, clearly. I mean, they needed that last night.
Fitting, they were in Seattle.
Exactly.
They get us some kind of coffee.
There was at least one bright spot in last night's game, and that was Jalen Royals' kick return. That was a very good moment for him and everything. And we've been talking about the return situation because, Nico Remigio is kind of the default returner at this point, most reliable that the Chiefs have. But if he gets pushed out, if somebody steps up and can emerge as an alternative, I mean, that might put Nico's spot in jeopardy. What did you see from the return game last night that kind of sorts any of this out yet for you?
So Sky Moore obviously had the punt return for the touchdown. That's the last.
Should absolutely give Sky Moore. I forgot to give him his props, Nick. That was even bigger than Jalen Royals' return.
Well,
I need a sport coffee.
Well, Matt, I know a guy, and the guy is called Quick Trip. So it's not really a guy; it's more of a place. But yeah, so with Sky Moore, I mean, I'm going to be a little bit blunt. And I'm not trying to take the wind out of his sail. One, the Chiefs set up a good wall. So I mean, all those guys, what they showed on tape is like encouraging. Like if you're another NFL team and those guys aren't gonna make the roster, you're like, hey, I need a special teams guy that understands how to create a wall and knows how to block. They saw about 6 or 7 guys on the Chiefs special teams that understand that concept and are capable of doing that and have been, as we like to call it, top by toe. It's a craze sweeping the nation, top by toe. He's going to put out some infomercials, maybe some videos or whatnot. If you want to improve your special teams and you're not a good special teams coach, just take a player off the Chiefs special teams list that was top by toe. Just wrote the commercial itself right there. But with Dave Toub, like he's so good at teaching fundamentals to guys that like you kind of forget and you take for granted sometimes until you watch other NFL teams in the league and you're like, oh yeah, that's why he's always going to be employed right there. But the Seahawks coverage had given up a little bit on they weren't exactly trying very hard. But the Chiefs did their jobs. So like I'm not going to take anything away from it. Sky Moore took full advantage of some guys loafing for the Seahawks and the Chiefs actually executing what they're supposed to, and took it the distance to where there's going to be an NFL team that's going to mark that down if he's not there on the Chiefs' final 53. And they're like, you know what, we'll take a chance on him. Then you take Jalen Royals. The key about him, and here's where I'm going to give Jack Cochran his praise. He had the big block that helped set up Royals being able to get upfield. So that was a kudos to him, as Roman Cano would call it kudos, as he did in press conference at one time.
Kudos and kudos.
Yeah, but kudos to him because he did, for the frustrations you have with him in terms of run defense, he had the blocking on special teams and always has. So he had the big block that allowed Royals to be able to see it, take that lane, cut, and go through without hesitation. And the primary thing as a returner is not hesitating. So somebody like Brashard Smith, he's got the speed, but he didn't necessarily – he hesitates. He doubts himself a little bit. And so that's kind of the thing that they're going to have to work with him long term is like, hey, when you see that, you cut and you go. You have a speed that eliminates angles and people cannot stop. And he showcased that whenever I want to say it was – one in the backside, guy got in the backfield. Smith was able to dodge it, boom, cut back, and turn that into a first down just off his speed alone. So I think from a return perspective, Royals has showed athletic ability that Nico Remigio doesn't have that same gear that Royals does. And Tyquan Thornton has a better gear. He just got a little hesitation in some of his returns, and that's just going to take game time reps. And Sky Moore was able to field the punt and take it to the house late in the game. So there was 3 guys that all showed just a little bit more athletic ability, or 4 guys if you want to include Sky that showed a little bit more athletic ability than where Nico Remigio's at. It's just a matter of what the Chiefs think is going to be best for them overall in that perspective.
All right, quick question here. If in this sense, if it comes down to a roster spot between Nico Remigio and Sky Moore, who are you keeping?
In that case, Sky Moore had drops as a receiver. Like he had 2 drops last night that should have been routine catches. So that's going to be a problem for him. Yeah, I mean, if I'm on choose between the two, then I'm choosing Remigio because I at least know he'll catch the ball and he'll field correctly.
Yeah, and the other challenge, Rashard Smith has shown real hesitancy as a punt returner. He's had 3 or 4 punts where he just looked like he could not make a decision about what he was going to do with the ball, whether to catch it or not.
And that takes experience.
It takes it. And then, but, once again, this is not a team that can learn on the job with a punt returner. I mean, to me, if you're going to go with a punt returner, it's going to have to be Nico or Sky. But Sky at least maybe gave you an opportunity that if there's some teams that need a returner, Sky's your guy. One more play I want to talk about from last night, because I think you've got a different view on this than what we saw in the broadcast, the safety and what happened on that play.
Players we'll talk about at the end. Remind me, hey, you got 2 players after the safety. Okay.
What'd you see on the safety then?
Okay. So on the safety there that they showed on there with Hunter Orzad and I believe it was CJ Hansen at left guard. Hansen was really frustrated with himself afterwards. I know the broadcast wasn't sure what was going on there with Hunter and that. What I saw was a defensive tackle that shot the gap between them. Normally, you're expecting the defensive tackle to feel your block and try to maintain leverage on the outside shoulder. And so that's what you expect as an offensive lineman when you're doing your reach step and you're going down the line. And for that guy, he did what Chris Jones used to do a lot of the time and just shoot the gap and disrupt the play instead. Especially, when you're trying to make a roster and everything, that's a big splash play that you're trying to make in that moment. So for Hunter, that was going to be a really tough block. And that may not make sense in that, but when you have a guy that's shooting on the inside shoulder of the guard, probably uninterrupted, and you're having to step down the line and try to flip your hips and try to work your way through and everything, that's going to take a handful of steps. So if that guy's got full momentum, you're really at a disadvantage to where you're just trying to, as my old line coach would say, you're just trying to ear hold the guy out of the way. And at that point, you've already blown up the run play because the running back isn't going to be able to continue to stretch that out if that's what you end up having to do in that regard. You're hoping he can cut off the backside of you inside to that point. So Hansen was frustrated. The only thing that you can do in that front, if you're doing kind of a combo or man block, but they maybe they're probably doing, I think they were doing zone at that point. What I would have had to have done in that guard situation is I'd either have to do a chip, take the shoulder, boom, hit him, turn him a little bit so Hunter can get him rotated and do that. But then if there's something on the outside of you, you're trying to create a path for the running back, either with what you just did or hoping that because the defensive tackle is reckless, you've given them another hole on top of that to be able to read and cut off of. So I don't feel that was on Hunter Orzad as much as it was emphasized on the broadcast and people are going to think, because the way Hansen reacted, how frustrated he was afterwards, he knew what happened. And then in the end, and the O-line coaches know, and they'll all work on that collectively if it was or wasn't Hansen. But I know by his reaction, I was like, uh-oh, that's not good.
All right. 2 other players you wanted to talk about, Nick.
Yeah. Issa Esapole, thought he did a really great job at tackle. I personally feel like he's their 4th best tackle right now. I feel like Wanye is like the 5th at this point. So if you're wondering what I'm saying, Simmons most upside, Jawan Taylor's the most polished. Then behind them, I think Jalen Moore is obviously the 3rd best tackle. And then I think Esapole is the 4th best tackle personally. Chu Godric still has a lot of the same problems where a guy can get to his outside shoulder and occasionally can get his hands whenever he's trying to punch, get those wax off and then get into his shoulder pads and get him back. Wanye Morris still has the issues with lunging on a regular basis. So in terms of those tackles, I think that's kind of where that ranking's at. And then I don't remember the final player at this point, and I feel terrible now.
Well, if you want to, I can add you one because
Robert Tonyan. That's who it was. Robert Tonyan.
Robert Tonyan's always fantastic. So
yeah. Matt's been he's been a passion project that Matt's that we've talked about on here since we've been watching it. The private OTAs, or not private, but closed to public. Robert Tonyan had another massive day that I think if he wasn't already on the roster, which I think he was, like you can't expose him to another NFL team and not have him as your fourth tight end.
I mean, the only thing that the Chiefs have going for them is he's a veteran. You can make the handshake agreement to release him. Doesn't have to go through waivers, and you can say, "Hey, Robert, don't go anywhere. We're going to keep you around." So
you could do that, yes, but
there's always a risk.
But I'm saying at some point he's gonna be on the Chiefs roster if he wants to be.
Absolutely, and the Chiefs may not let him choose. They may just go ahead and keep him on the roster.
As they should.
All right, I know we've gone too long, Nick, but I do want to know what needs does this team have? Because on the 26th, we're 10 days away from roster cuts. We know from talking to Chris Shea, Mike Bradway this week, they're looking at every team in the league, trying to find out who are those guys that might be on the bubble that could be available, either via trade or on the waiver wire. Mm-hmm. So. Needs, Nick, what positions do you think the Chiefs need to be looking at?
If I'm the Chiefs, I'm still scouring for a fourth running back. Elijah Mitchell hasn't shown the burst and athletic ability he had before that hamstring injury last year, so I have concerns there. And they may need somebody to pair with Kareem, Pacheco's speed. If those two guys get hurt, then you're now down to Brashard Smith and the other person or whatever happens there. I just don't think you have an additional running back that you can rely on. You need additional pass rushing help. You're always going to need more pass rushing help. They need some. If there's a guy that becomes available, they need to keep tabs on that front. And then obviously cornerback. If there's a guy you can find for that fifth or sixth cornerback spot, if you end up doing that, you may need that. And I would still always keep my eyes peeled at Mike linebacker if there's somebody that they need from a depth perspective.
Yeah, I'm with you on the running back. My latest roster projection that I had up before the game, I only had 3 running backs because I don't think the fourth running back maybe is on this roster right now. They need to be looking out there for somewhere else. We'll also see how the injuries coming out of this game filter a little bit of this. Obviously, Najee Johnson with the shoulder injury is a concerning look. Mike Edwards' safety with a hamstring, and especially Felix Anudike-Uzomah with the hamstring because he needed help getting off the field from athletic trainers. That's a concern because you just mentioned the pass rush. And if Felix is going to be out a considerable amount of time, that's a roster spot. Right now, Malik Herring would be the next man up. And then you're kind of just where you were a year ago. So certainly some areas the Chiefs might be looking at. Nick, hey, another preseason game in the books. Busy week for the Chiefs. They're going to be back to work on Sunday, getting ready for the preseason finale against the Bears, which looks like it will be a tune-up game of sorts. So I think you will see the starters more in that game, unlike this one. Nick, obviously, we'll be back here. We've got the Q&A on Tuesday nights, and hopefully you can come in and hang out with us for a little bit, 7 o'clock Tuesday
I will not
night.
be there for that one.
Okay, that's okay. See, that's why we talk about these things in advance. And then we will come back with you next week. 41 is the mic for Chicago Bears postgame. Any parting thoughts from you, Nick?
I apologize to Mick Schaefer. We ran out of time.
You've been listening to 41 is the Mic, presented by KSHP 41, your home of the Chiefs and Chiefs Digest.